Welcome to another video. Today we're continuing our topic on sexual reproduction, and we'll be talking about reproductive behaviors. And our last video we started talking about pollination in plants. So today's video will continue from there, and last video we talked about the two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. So today we'll talk about the features favoring self-pollination, the features that favor self-pollination. Now, self-pollination can occur in bisexual flowers and also in unisexual flowers of monoecious plants. So it can occur in both bisexual flowers and unisexual flowers of monoecious plants. Now, there are some adaptive features that favor self-pollination. So let's talk about these features. The first one, homogamy. Now, when we say homogamy, what we mean by this situation is that, or this condition, is that the carpels and stamens of a bisexual flower maturing at the same time. So that is what happens in homogamy. So the carpels and the stamen of bisexual flowers of some plants mature at the same time. So this homogamous condition promotes self-pollination. Now, it promotes self-pollination in these following ways. Now, because the carpels and the stamens are maturing at the same time, this condition promotes self-pollination in several ways. One of these ways is that pollinating agents can readily carry pollen grains from the mature anthers to the receptive stigmas, because since they are mature at the same time, the pollinating agent can carry pollen grains from the mature anthers to the receptive stigmas. That's one way. Also, the filaments of anthers may bend over, they may recoil to bring the anthers near the stigmas. So the anthers then burst and discharge the pollen grains directly on the stigmatic surface or on the stigma. So the first way we said the homogamous condition or homogamy can promote self-pollination is through pollinating agents carrying the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Now, the second way is when the filaments of the anther bend over and they bring the anthers near the stigma. Now, when they bend over or recoil and bring the anther near the stigma, the anthers then burst, then discharge pollen grains directly on the stigmatic surface or on the stigma. And an example of a plant that does this is the 4 o'clock plant, which is also known as mirabilis. So that's another way homogamy can promote self-pollination. Also, in some other species, the stigmas bend over to touch the mature anthers when cross-pollination fails. So the stigma will bend over to touch the mature anthers if cross-pollination fails. And that's a common practice in members of the sunflower and hibiscus families. Also, another way homogamy promotes self-pollination is when in tubular flowers like periwinkle and ixora, the anthers are arranged at the mouth of the corolla tube. Now, as the carpels mature, the stigmas push their way through the tube, brushing against the mature anthers and taking on pollen grains on their surface as they do so. So that's another way homogamy promotes self-pollination. In some flowers, tubular flowers like the periwinkle and ixora, the anthers are arranged at the mouth of the corolla tube, so that when the carpels mature, the stigmas push their way through the tube when they are growing, and they brush against the mature anthers and they take on pollen grains on their surfaces, and pollination has occurred that way. So those are the ways homogamy can promote self-pollination. So first feature that favors self-pollination is homogamy. Now let's talk about another feature that promotes self-pollination, which is cleistogamy. Now, cleistogamy is a situation or condition where the flower does not open. Now, in some bisexual flowers, those flowers never open. So in these closed flowers, the pollen grains are discharged directly onto the receptive stigmas. So that promotes self-pollination. So those are the features that promote self-pollination. Now let's talk about features that promote cross-pollination. Let's not forget that self-pollination involves pollination between flowers on the same plant, either the same flower or two different flowers on the same plant. The pollen grains move from the anther to the stigma of the same plant or of the same flower or a flower on the plant. Now, cross-pollination involves the pollen grains moving from the flowers of a plant to another plant. So let's now talk about the features that promote or that favor cross-pollination. Now the first one is unisexuality. So we discussed this in one of our previous videos, where unisexuality is when plants have when flowers have only one sex. So we have either male or female flowers. Now in dioecious plants like pawpaw, only cross-pollination can occur in those kind of plants because the male and the female flowers are on separate plants. So unisexuality is when we have flowers that bear separate flowers for each of the sexes, and dioecious plants are plants where we have separate plants bearing the separate flowers. So dioecious and unisexual plants, only cross-pollination can occur. Now, such plants have perfected their adaptation for achieving cross-pollination. So those kind of plants, they have special adaptation so that cross-pollination can occur, despite the fact that the flowers are on different plants. So in monoecious plants like the pumpkin, oil palm, and maize, self-pollination is possible, but the likelihood of this self-pollination is reduced because, one, the female flowers could be above and the male flowers are below. So the female flowers are above the male flowers. So it's almost impossible for the it is harder for the pollen grains to go from the anther to the stigma because the stigma is on the female flower. So it's hard for the pollen grains to move from the anther to the stigma because the female flower is above the male flower. Also, another reason where self-pollination may not be possible is when the male flowers and the female flowers ripen at different times. So when the male flowers and female flowers are ripening at different times, it will be hard for self-pollination to occur. So it will be hard for self-pollination to occur because when the pollen grains are ready to move to the the stigma, the female isn't ready, or the stigma isn't ready, or it hasn't matured. So self-pollination cannot occur that way, or the female matures before the male, and when the female is ready, when the stigma is ready to receive pollen grains, the male flower hasn't matured, so self-pollination cannot occur. So in that case, the male plant functions as a male plant only when the male flowers are mature, and it functions as a female plant when the female flowers are mature. So, in monoecious plants, each flower has both the male and the female. In monoecious plants, we have both the male and female flowers on one plant. So, to encourage pollination, the plant will function as a male plant only when the male flowers are mature, and as a female plant when the female flowers are mature. So that encourages pollination. Now let's talk about another feature that favors cross-pollination in plants, which is dichogamy. Now, most species of flowering plants bear bisexual flowers. Now, this usually prevents self-pollination because the flowers, we have flowers that the stamens and the carpels mature at different times. So this may not encourage self-pollination. So because of that, these flowers are called dichogamous flowers. So they function as male flowers only when the stamens are mature, and as female flowers only when the carpels are mature. So that's what we're just talking about. So that condition, that characteristic is called dichogamy, when a plant functions as male or female, or a flower functions as male or female when the carpels are mature. That last one we're talking about plants, but this one we're talking about the flower. So the flower functions as a male only when the stamens are mature, and as a female when the carpels are mature.